Still to come, a special report from Greece as we investigate the rivalry between the country's finest, Olympiakos and Panathinaikos. Greece, home of ancient philosophy of Socrates, Plato and Aristotle. But when it comes to their football, the philosophy is more about actions than words. Greece's top two are Olympiakos and Panathinaikos. Always a great occasion when they meet, and one that's featured some great players too.
In my first derby, I scored from a free kick against Panathinaikos. It really hit home to play in this game. The derby is so special for the whole of Athens. The week or 2 weeks beforehand, everyone's talking about the derby, and it was great to score in it.
This was the toughest derby I played in. Really tough, especially the first one. When we played this derby in the Olympic Stadium, there were never too many problems. But this game is different. Lots of flares, intensity and incredible emotion. It was very, very intense. You really felt the strength of the emotions and the passion from both sets of fans.
Although very much a local derby, Olympiakos are from the port Piraeus outside of Athens, while Panathinaikos are from the capital itself. On match day, expect the usual banter and name-calling. Two stand out. Olympiakos call Panathinaikos fans the Rabbits. They believe that they run to the mountains in fear whenever the two teams meet. Olympiakos are known as the Fish Market, a derogatory term taken from their port location. The roots of this rivalry go way back. In May of 1930, Greece had been thrashed 8-1 by Romania in the Balkan Cup. That team comprised of 9 Olympiakos players, but not one from Panathinaikos. As the ship they travelled in returned home from Romania, Panathinaikos fans waited on the shores to ridicule the team that had brought shame to the nation. A week later, worse was to follow for Olympiakos as they travelled to Rivalries to meet Panathinaikos. Achilles Grammatikopoulos was the Greek and Olympiakos goalkeeper of the time.
We came back on the Romanian ship, which was called Romania, and people were waiting for us in the harbour because we'd let in all those goals. My teammate's excuse was that the pitch was too muddy, and among other things, the only player who really scored was Vega, a Hungarian who used to play with the Romanian team. He scored 7 of the 8 goals. The following Sunday, Olympiakos played against Panathinaikos, and again we let in 8 goals.
Hereafter, these two teams became known as the eternal enemies. Panathinaikos boasts the greatest achievement in Europe for a Greek side, reaching the European Cup final at Wembley in 1971. A valiant loss to a great Ajax team by 2-0.
Well, that went down in history as something fantastic, because back then there was a huge difference between Greek football and the rest of Europe. What Panathinaikos did then, well, we can call it a miracle. But unfortunately, no other Greek team has got near since.
For the players of that era, Olympiakos versus Panathinaikos was the game. Many of them still meet to play today in their version of the derby. A bit different now, though.
Today you just touch the opponent and the ref books you. Back then, if you hadn't had your head cut off, the ref didn't blow the whistle. It was very physical football.
For Panathinaikos, Mimis Damazos was known as the General. Over 500 appearances for the club. Playing in the derby is among his favourite memories.
If I still played today, I'd like to play against Olympiakos every Sunday. I didn't have any complex about them. I wasn't afraid of Olympiakos.
Down the years, the clubs took it in turns to dominate the eras. By the time the early 1990s came along, it was Panathinaikos in control. A memorable 4-3 win at their arch-rivals ground in February of 1990, leading to the first of 4 championships that they won in that decade.
It was my debut, my first derby at Karaiskaki Stadium. It was tough, a difficult occasion for Panathinaikos. There were lots of problems, riots in the stadium. You'd normally expect a match to last for 90 minutes. But what with all the interruptions and the referee suspending play 2 or 3 times, the game actually lasted about 3 hours. Still, we went on to win the game 4-3.
Krzysztof Washika is Panathinaikos' all-time leading scorer. In nearly 400 games for the club, he managed 244 goals.
You know that the derby games with Olympiakos always evoke some kind of extra emotion. Let's say that the game is somehow different. Everyone waits all year for it, anticipating who will win. It's the best match in the whole of Greece.
Panathinaikos have faded since the 90s, but like their neighbours, they too have relied on foreign talent.
Be 2 or 3 weeks before the game. Everyone lets you know it's no ordinary game. Even if you don't understand the language, you can feel the tension and the message is clear. We have to win the game at any cost. As simple as that.
As a player, Victor Munoz featured in one of the fiercest rivalries of them all for Barcelona against Real Madrid. But as manager of Panathinaikos, he experienced an atmosphere equally as frenetic.
The Greeks are very passionate when it comes to football. And it's amazing to see the intensity when it comes to a derby. They live the football every minute of the day. I would say that football here in Greece has more media exposure than in countries like Spain or even Argentina. They talk about the derby here every minute of every day for the weeks that lead up to the big day itself. Football is everything for the Greeks.
Munoz isn't wrong. No less than 11 daily sports newspapers must make Greece one of the most football-crazy nations on the planet.
The Greeks love their sports, especially football. It's a game we follow passionately here, just as we do with basketball. After an important game like the derby between Olympiakos and Panathinaikos, banter is bound to follow between rival fans. Panathinaikos supporters will tease Olympiakos fans, and vice versa, for losing the derby. A few days ago, there was a basketball game between Panathinaikos and Olympiakos. Olympiakos won and the usual banter followed. People here love their sport. It entertains them, no matter which team they root for. That's why most people like to read sports newspapers. They get the latest news for their team and football in general. We Greeks like to say that we have more coaches than we have spectators. That is a very telling remark. Most people have that football bug, and that is why they devote much of their time to sports newspapers.
All you need to know is that there are 11 daily sports papers in Athens alone. 11! And then another 4 or 5 radio stations that only talk about football. And each of these is either behind one of AEK, Olympiakos or Panathinaikos. And then about 50 TV stations. So the press is completely different. The way they see things, the day-to-day intensity and the constant need for news. Everyone wants news stories.
It's something the players take notice of too.
It's
clearly down to a player's character, if he pays attention to the media or not. And it depends on the way each player reacts. Personally, I do try and stay out of it, but I also want to be informed. So I read every paper, every day. I don't necessarily appear in all of them, but I read my paper to be informed. There is pressure from the media, but I want to know what's going on.
In 2006, Salpagidis became Panathinaikos' most expensive player. Along with his strike partner, Dimitrios Papadopoulos, it's all about the usual: winning trophies and beating your local rivals.
If we win the derby, I feel on top of the world, the happiest man around.
It's Olympiakos fans who've had more to cheer about in recent years. 2007's title success meant they'd won 10 out of the last 11 championships. That one 2004 loss to their bitter rivals. Big-name stars have come and gone at the club. Those such as Brazilian Rivaldo have helped to put them on the map.